Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we are talking with Paige Park. Paige is the founder of SoulSanctuary.one and specializes in grief yoga. That is very interesting. It's a new take for me, at least. Welcome to the show, Paige. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jill. I'm so excited to be here and to share with you and your audience.
Well, let's dive right in. Tell us how you got started. Grief yoga is something I have never heard of before, and I'm really interested in hearing all about how you're doing it, why you're doing it, how coaching works into it.
I got started 10 years ago. My divorce was final. 5 months after my divorce was final, my mom was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she passed away 9 months later. And then 2 years after my mom passed away, my father passed away. And we were caregiving, my brothers and I were caregiving for both of our parents during that time period. And then 2 years after my father died, my oldest brother passed away.
Oh, wow.
And so it was this series of grief. And my body didn't know what to do with all of it because there was so much emotion. And not just the grief, but like the after grief. So like we had to sell mom and dad's house and finalize the estate. We had to do the same thing with my brothers. So by the time I finished all of this, my nervous system was a hot mess.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was number one on the call list when my parents were in care. So I would get the 2, 1, 3, 5 a.m. phone calls when something happened to one of them. And so I was doing some work and internal work, and a friend who was she did energy work, and she's like, Paige, why don't you try yoga? And I went, oh yeah, I forgot about yoga, because yoga had made its way in and out of my life for years. I took my first yoga class as a PE credit for college. And then, prior to my divorce, I really leaned into the breath work of yoga, to help me deal with all of that. And it kind of went by the wayside when I was dealing with my parents. And so I was like, oh yeah. And I was a teacher, and right about that time, the school corporation that I worked for offered some yoga classes at a deep discount. The school was picking up part of the cost, and then we had to pay part of the cost. And that became my safe haven and my sanctuary. That space became just an integral part in my life and my world. And I found myself again. I found regulation again. I figured out how to handle all the things that were coming my way. I was able to use the postures to help my body move the emotion through without becoming super attached to the story that went along with it. So it just allowed the emotion to come up and dissipate as I moved through the different positions. And so I was like, hey, this is cool. I want to teach this to my students, because like I said, I was a mild disabilities special education teacher for years and years. And I talked to the yoga teacher. She was going to do a teacher training. was going to sign up for that, but she ended up moving it. And this was 2000. Oh no, it was 2019. And I ended up signing up for a yoga teacher training that was supposed to be in Costa Rica in July of 2020. And that didn't happen, but I did get trained. The teacher that I went with flipped her model from an in-person retreat model to an online model. And I was in her first 200-hour class, and then I was in her first 300-hour class. And it's kind of one of those things, once you jump down the rabbit hole, you just keep doing things. And so I've taken yin certification and restorative and some other things as well. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it. The grief part came in. It's really funny. Like, grief is what led me to yoga, but it's not what got me into yoga teacher training. I wanted to create social emotional curriculum for high school students struggling with mental health concerns. Was my original intent. And about 6 months after I completed my 200-hour, one of my best friends went, "Hey, Paige, you need to teach grief yoga." And I went, "No, I don't." "You're crazy." And 2 months later, I started teaching grief yoga, and it has morphed into more of a coaching. So I help people with their personal yoga practice if they want to incorporate that. But also the 8 limbs of yoga are a beautiful guide on how to live life and how to live a balanced life. And so I use the 8 limbs of yoga to help people find their own balance.
So easy to get knocked off balance when you're struggling with grief.
Yes.
It's personal, but it's also external, because you have to interact with all of these people that really don't know what to say to you and know how you're feeling. And no matter what community you're in, it's never because it's so personal, and each experience is personal in a different way. It's like, you lose your mom, you feel one way. You lose your dad, you feel a different way. You lose your siblings, you feel a different way. You lose your spouse, it's totally different. And it's not one size fits all. And the yoga, I can see how the two go together so well, and leave a space for people to just experience the emotions they're experiencing. And give their body something to do with it.
Yes, very much so. It's all about just being with yourself and your body physically where you are, and then embracing whatever happens to come up.
So do you do this online now, or is it all
in person? I do online and in person. I have a membership that is 100. Well, I mean, you can do a virtual or you can do an in-person class with a membership, but it's online. So it's got an archive of meditations and yoga classes, and then we meet twice a month virtually. And those get recorded, and then they go into the archive, so you can access any previous classes.
That sounds really, really interesting. Do you do it through Facebook, or do you have an outside?
All right, it's through my website. So I have I use Squarespace for my website. So it's just a membership portal in Squarespace that holds all of the things.
I only ask because sometimes there are people that are just like, "No, Facebook, forget it." So I just wanted to let the audience know that, not everything revolves around Facebook.
Right. Yeah. Well, and with Facebook, and I don't know if you've experienced this as a business owner, like, I don't own that.
Yes.
But with Squarespace, I own it. So that's one of the reasons I went with my website instead of Facebook, is because if something happens, if it gets disconnected, if it, whatever might come up, I have no way of contacting my people. Whereas with Facebook, I do, or with, through Squarespace, through my website, I do.
Yeah.
And so it's the meditations. I do a monthly virtual meditation. And that's the first Tuesday of every month. And then the classes, I haven't settled on a day and time yet for those, but they're twice a month, sometimes 3 if I'm feeling extra generous.
Okay. So what kind of people would be interested in coming to see you? I know people that are experiencing grief, but are there other
People
people
that are
that
experiencing grief, and it doesn't have to be like grief that happened this year. It could be grief that happened, like for me, 10 years ago, 9 years ago. Like it doesn't have to be recent grief. It could also just be if you're feeling kind of stuck, like there's something going on here physically and I can't quite wrap my hands around what it is and how to move it, then you would want to come to me.
and grief doesn't always have to involve death
No, it
of
doesn't.
a loved one.
It doesn't.
It can involve, losing your job or getting married.
Yeah.
There's grief around having your kids move out. I mean,
Yes.
there's grief
Having your
around
kids
a
move.
lot of different things.
Yes, grief is more than just loss. Looking at life in a different way can also be grief. We all went through the experiences of 2020 and how the world changed. That's a type of grief.
Mhm.
Losing a job, starting a different job, marriage, divorce, having a baby, having your kids go off, like all of those can involve the feelings and emotions of grief, which are deep and complex. There is no one emotion that goes with it.
And even things that are ostensibly really exciting and new in your life, like having a baby or getting married, you do grieve to a certain extent the other life that you knew so well. Or if you're a teenager and you're moving out of the home for the first time, there's grief involved in that.
Yes.
It's grief happens in transitions, times of transition.
Yes.
When you let go of
Absolutely.
one thing and you embrace something new, and the grief is kind of the newness of existing and trying to figure out how your body and mind and soul are going to acclimate to it. I
Yeah.
guess way of looking at it.
Yes, absolutely. So grief is one of those things that we don't always identify it as grief. But any, and I do talk about that, like any transition in life can bring grief up, even if it's a beautiful and positive thing, even if it's something that you desire and that you want. I went through a grief. I left teaching this past June after being an educator for 24 years. And there was a grief that accompanied that transition and change into being a full-time business owner versus being a teacher and a part-time business owner.
Yeah. And recognizing that it's okay. It's happening.
Absolutely.
And just being able to be at peace with it. And again, I think the grief yoga is like something so fascinating to me because I love yoga to begin with. It is just such a great mechanism for allowing your body to release things and to experience things all at the same time. You're taking in and you're giving out.
Yeah.
You're part of the universe, but you're not. It's the whole yin and yang of the thing. But having somebody that's showing you how to incorporate both pieces, like trying to get the grief work out through the postures and the breathing exercises and the meditations, I think it's really something very helpful and useful for people.
Yeah, it's a really powerful practice that you don't always think about when you think about like grief and working through the emotions and all of the things that go with it. But yes, it's such a powerful practice, and it's a beautiful way to just express the emotion. I think I told you before I came on, I just got done with a retreat. And on the last day, where it was a yin yoga retreat, and our last yin yoga class, she puts us in this deep hip opening posture called pigeon.
Yeah.
I have a love-hate relationship with pigeon, and I do a lot of yoga. I practice a lot of yoga, and I sobbed I think we were in the position for 5 minutes because it's yin.
Oh my God.
And I sobbed, like left side sobbed the entire time I'm in bed, and I'm like trying to breathe and it hurts and all of this feeling is coming up. And I was like, okay, that's done. Now we're going to move to the other side. As soon as we hit the posture on the other side, I started sobbing again. It's like, I thought we were done with that. Apparently not. Okay, there's more. We're just going to cry. And I just sobbed through the second side. And it's okay. Like that all needed to come out. It all needed to come up. And I felt afterwards, I felt such a relief that, oh, okay, it was stuck, it was stored, it's moved through. And I know that that's some of what my clients experience as well. Now it's hard for me to get that when I'm coaching myself. So I go to things so that I can experience that for myself as well. And that retreat was just a wonderful way to process and experience and work through all of those things that had been stuck within myself as well.
Yeah, I totally see that with pigeon. I'm sorry.
Love-hate relationship. It's okay.
I
Yeah,
have a love-hate relationship with
relationship.
it too. It's just
Love-hate
like,
relationship.
it's like, I never thought of crying. That might make it feel better.
That's one of the first times I usually just try and breathe through pigeon. Sorry, my dog is being annoying. Of course,
Your dog is totally fine. My dog, I have this puppy and he barks randomly when I'm doing things.
I get on Zoom and she decides that she needs all of the attention. So yeah, it honestly, it felt really good to cry through pigeon. I don't think I have before. But everything just bubbled up. And I was like, okay, well, this is where we're going. So this is where we are. And she's so sweet. The teacher she was the space holder for the retreat, and the teacher for the class, she comes over, she just rubbing my back. And I'm like, you got this, just let it go. And I did. And it's just such a beautiful way, because especially as humans in general, but as women specifically, we store a lot of garbage in our hips.
Mm-hmm. And crying is such an amazing release. And we're told all our lives, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Well, I say cry.
Oh, I say cry.
Is so good for you.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to have a reason. If your body is saying, I want to cry, just let it go.
I had absolutely no reason. I had no reason other than there was something. And it's one of the things that I tell my clients is when you feel an emotion, just feel the emotion. You don't have to put a story with it. It doesn't have to mean anything. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to tie to some event that happened. Just feel the emotion. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I sat there and I breathed and I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're going to cry because that's where we are right now. And I cried. And after a while, it dissipated.
Just away. My daughter does that. She taught me this. It was an amazing lesson, but she would often cry. And I would ask her, why are you crying? And I don't know. I'm just crying. Are you sad? No, I'm just crying. Are you mad? No, I'm just crying. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want a hug? Yeah, you can hold me. I'd hold her and she would cry, and then she would be better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not something that necessarily has to last long. Sometimes just a few minutes. And I would experience that when I was really in the throes of grief after the loss of my parents. I would have moments of just intense tears. And then oftentimes the tears would give way to laughter because then a story would pop in my head of something that my parents did or specifically my dad, something that my dad had done. And that would lead to me just cracking up because he was hilarious. And so then you just feel that too. And it's all good and it's all beautiful and it's all okay.
Yeah. And it's being able to just recognize that emotions have specific releases that your body needs to express. Otherwise, there's all these chemical things happening inside of you. They have no place to go, and they end up actually attacking your organs. And if you don't let it out, which is like a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
I think
Which
that's
can
why
lead to all sorts of other things, but we're not talking about that today.
Yeah, we're not talking about that
really
today.
Long conversation.
As yoga is really an excellent way to release all of that stuff.
It really is.
It gets your body moving.
Yes, it gets your body moving and it gets into those areas where things can go stagnant. That we may not necessarily, especially in our more sedentary lifestyle, we may not necessarily move. And so when you get into those shapes in yoga, then it will release some things so that you can move through it. And as the layers peel back, you release and feel better and uncover more and more of who you are.
And just going through the postures, I think it might scare some people off when you watch people who have been practicing yoga for a long time. I know it did when I first started. I was just like, I can't even stand on my head anymore. Like these postures are like not happening for me. But it doesn't matter. It's just going, and if you're just standing there with your arms stuck out.
Yeah.
That's where you start.
It's not about standing on your head. It's not about handstands and arm balances, although those are super cool.
And crow and all these other things out there that, you don't have to do those things. You can just do the simple positions, and you can do them the best you can for the shape you're in. Right. And it will improve over time. You'll find that you can, bend over further.
I've had clients who couldn't touch their toes when they started working with me. And after a few months of releasing and learning the basics and the postures and the foundations, they were able to touch their toes. And it could be that simple. It doesn't have to be complex.
Right. And so if you're trying to find a way to deal with the grief that you're going through, don't be put off by the idea of doing yoga or contacting Paige and having her help you walk through what grief yoga looks like. Because no matter where you are in the yoga journey, there's something that you will get out of it every time you practice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's so true. No matter where you are, like I've been practicing on and off for years, and I still, like I said, I sobbed just earlier this week as a result of being put in a certain shape. And that's okay. And sometimes you may have an experience or an emotion, and sometimes you may not. And that's okay too. Sometimes it's just the simple act of moving your body that helps.
Yeah. And every time you go to the mat, at the end, you've done it. Yeah. And there's just a certain amount of satisfaction in knowing that you did something that you were committed to every day.
Yeah.
Or a few times a week.
There's definitely a satisfaction in coming to the mat and leaving behind what's not serving you on the mat and moving on without it. My
favorite part of yoga, I used to go to a yoga class. Now I do yoga in my bedroom, but we had this gal, and we would do it for like an hour, and then at the end when we were doing Shavasana,
the final rest,
Okay.
corpse
The
pose,
final rest.
corpse pose.
The meditation part at the very end that I
Yeah.
loved so much. It was my favorite pose. She would
It's-
come around with essential oils and put them on our forehead, and she
uh-huh.
just like, it was just the way she touched you, and her touch was so amazing. It's something that I will take with me forever, and
Yeah, there are some
will
people that do
forever
that very
value
magically.
Denise for that
It is.
in my life.
Yeah, no, that's the best part. And there was somewhere I read or heard, maybe it was it was my teacher. As I was going through teacher training, she said, if you don't do Shavasana, you haven't done yoga.
Yeah, because
Like that's you move the body so that the mind can then focus. So that's the purpose of the positions and the postures. It's not to get into these different shapes. It's to move the body. And you move the body so that the mind can then focus. And that's why you do the meditation at the end. So the meditation is actually the purpose of yoga. It's to get to that point of quiet meditation and refocusing the mind.
And when it's like walking through the doorway, yoga's one space. The Savasana is the doorway into like the rest of your day.
Yeah.
It 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 kind of closes the door on the yoga session, but it also opens your movement into the new experience that you're going to have for the rest of your day or your
I
time.
like how you worded that. Yeah, it does. It does. It opens the door on, well, and oftentimes you leave the mat and you go out into the world, and the things that you've learned on the mat, you can take with you out into the world. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's like a miniature version of the world. And so bringing that out with you creates more space and more peace and more tranquility in the chaos of life. It gives you this different perspective so that as things come your way that maybe are not necessarily so great, because we know that that happens in life. We are constantly bombarded with things that we struggle with. It gives us a different perspective on how to handle those things, which is why it's such a beautiful pairing with grief, because it gives us a different perspective of how the grief affects us, as with other things as well. So not just grief, but all of the chaos in life.
And putting your attention on each posture that you're forming, it helps you to control your thoughts. Mm-hmm. And really controlling your thoughts is key to everything in life.
Absolutely.
To me, if you can't control your thoughts, you're just going to be at the whim of whatever comes up in your life. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you can control your thoughts, and as you're doing yoga, it's all about controlling your thoughts and controlling your breathing. Breathing is the other key aspect of controlling your life. Sometimes you're going to get in situations where they're scary, they're terrible, they're threatening to you in some way. If you can control your breathing through it, even as simple as which nostril you're breathing through, you can change the way your brain chemistry is working in order to have the proper response or to call upon your resources. Like one side is an emotional side. When you breathe through one side of your nose, it stimulates the emotional side of your body. So if you plug that and breathe through the other nostril, because you only breathe through one nostril at a time. I know it seems like we breathe through both of them, but it doesn't really happen. So if you're feeling emotional and you don't want to feel emotional, you block off that side of your nostril or your nose.
Yeah, the left is lunar. The left is lunar. So the rest and digest, and the right is solar. But also, if you need to amp yourself up for something, like to increase your energy, then you breathe through the right.
Yes. Yeah.
I think, or you breathe through it, or it's the opposite.
They cross.
Yeah, they
So
do.
I am always confused, and that's why I never say which side.
Well, I can tell you the left is lunar and the right is solar, but I feel there's, and I should know this, but I'm also just coming off of retreat. So yeah, the left is lunar, the right is solar. So if you block the left and breathe through the right, then that stimulates the solar side. No, it does. I think it stimulates. And if you go the other way, then it stimulates the lunar side. Or it could be the reverse, because they do. And you're referring to the nadis, which are energy channels through the energetic body, according to yogic philosophy. And it starts on the right and the left, and then it crosses at the crown or at the third eye, and then it goes back through the body and crosses at each chakra center. But that's, again, another conversation for another time. Yeah, it can be very confusing, although I find yogic anatomy really fascinating. I love talking about the energetic body because it's so often overlooked.
And it's so important. It just like,
it's almost, I feel like it's almost more important than the physical body, because the emotional body, the energetic body, it words are hard. It expresses in the physical body. So if that is out of alignment, then oftentimes the physical body will also be out of alignment.
Yeah. And the simple things that you can do to fix it, which is just, some yoga positions, doing them, you can feel totally different and kind of, I call it kind of an ethereal feeling. It's like you're here, but you're also there.
Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling, and you haven't done any drugs or alcohol.
Right. Exactly.
I love it.
And it's so fun.
It is so fun. It feels so good. It's just like, to me, it's better than drugs or alcohol. I don't do either these days. So yeah, it just kind of like helps you be one with the world or universe, and it really is a feeling that allows you to be present, more fully than any other time.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely allows you to be present. Well, and that's where life is happening, is in the present. So the more you're able to not think about the past and not worry about the future and just be in the midst of what is happening now, the better off you are.
For sure. For sure. I know that you have a self-regulation quiz that you offer to people on your website. Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay. There are different types of self-regulation. And so what it does is it gives you, there is no one, you're not this specific type all of the time. Sometimes you fluctuate between the types, depending on your mood, depending on what your experiences are in that moment. But we tend toward kind of a certain way of responding to things. And so the quiz will give you what your type is, at least in a snapshot in that moment. But then you also get an ebook that gets delivered to you that has an explanation of all of the types, and it has a practice to go with each type. Oh,
I love that. And how can people get that?
You can go to my website, soulsanctuary.one. And it's like right at the top of the homepage. Just click the link and it'll take you to the quiz.
Well, I'm going to take it. This has been amazing. Tell us the one thing you want to leave the audience with today, Paige.
Yoga doesn't have to be a complex practice. Sometimes it's just bringing awareness to what's going on. remembering to remember. It can just be checking in with your breath. How is your breath? Where are you breathing? Are you breathing from your chest? Are you breathing from your diaphragm? Do you need to slow your breathing down? And sometimes just the simple act of paying attention to our breath, paying attention to our breathing can help create shifts. So we don't have to get into fancy positions like we talked about. You don't even always have to move your body into a yoga shape. Just pay attention to your breath.
I love that. I love that. It really is that simple.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.